Hi. Hey, are we live? Excellent.
Yes.
Hi, guys. Sorry, a little bit crazy day today. Just some family stuff going on. And the only way Mike and I can do this is both via car. But we're going to keep the streak going and try to keep the thing going today and just get into really quick hit stuff today. But we appreciate it for all of you out there who support the show and everything like that. Okay, so hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, May 11th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello in a parking lot near a Starbucks.
I am Eklund driving somewhere in Pennsylvania, and you're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday in the afternoon to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And Mike, you're up in Toronto because of a interesting development. The Leafs have named their GM.
Yeah, well actually I just crossed over the border, but yeah, it was very strange. About quarter after 9 this morning, Renaud Lavoie of TVA Sports, Elliot Friedman, basically all the insiders got the news at the same time. Kyle Dubis, who has been assistant general manager of the Maple Leafs for the last 4 years, was promoted to general manager, replacing Lou Lamoriello. I drove up for the press conference, and it was pretty straightforward. Brendan Shanahan and Dubis, and I think pretty much everybody knows what Kyle Dubas is. He's a young guy. He's a really smart guy. I think he's got ideas of how to run a club. He's sort of been under the tutelage of Lou Lamoriello the last few years. He still, he indicated that him and Lou are still in contact, and there's a close relationship there. And right now it doesn't sound like Lou is going anywhere, but that could change in the foreseeable future. But Dubas is now going to be taking control, and the one thing that we'll find out eventually is the status of Mark Hunter,
Hi.
who. Yep, I'm still here. I'm still talking. Um, Brendan Shanahan indicated that Mark Hunter and Kyle Dubas were the two candidates for the GM position, and he opted for Dubas. So that immediately, brings into question what the status of Hunter will be going forward.
Yeah.
Everything will be reviewed. We don't know what that really means, but I've long suspected that if Hunter got the job, I think Dubas would be looking for a position elsewhere, and I don't see why that would be the case. Why that wouldn't be the case, vice versa. But right now, everything's in a holding pattern when it comes to Hunter, and I mean, we'll see what happens in the next month or so.
Yeah, I mean, has he done enough to really merit like a serious consideration for another GM position, do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, Mark Hunter is primarily responsible for the drafting of
Right.
guys like Marner and not only Matthews. I mean, I could have drafted Austin Matthews, but they've had some really good picks in their draft the last couple of years while Hunter
Right.
is in control. And he's well respected. He's been the GM of the London Knights.
Yeah. And
He's a really respected hockey guy. So I think the one thing is that general manager wise, Don Waddell took over in Carolina. Paul Fenton, as we've been
yeah.
rumored, may be getting the Minnesota job. Those are the only two GM or those that the Minnesota job is the only one left available. So maybe Hunter
Right.
stays around because there isn't a GM job to jump to, but
Right.
we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is one. I mean, I think the Minnesota job has been filled. I was told that it's going to be announced very shortly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's done. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was Paul Fenton now that Nashville's out. I think we could see that any day. I think that
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if Monday, even just a guess, but Monday we hear about that job being filled. Um, and I the other like we say Carolina's out of the running. It looks like it really does look like Lou Lamoriello is heading to the island, and whether or not that's going to be what capacity that's going to be with, if he's going to work with Garcino. Now, Garcino is, remember, that he's actually pretty close with Lou, and
Yeah.
actually can work with pretty well with him, I think, and considers himself, if you ask Garcino who he models himself after, it is Lou Lamoriello. That's the GM he
Right.
models himself after. So they could work pretty well together there. And I don't think beyond that, right now, there's a job out there, So the question is, I mean, I think this is a great. I mean, I think they picked the right guy, though. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
no disrespect to Hunter, but you know, this is they feel like when the people I talk to know what's going on. I don't think that many of us really know the inner workings of teams and what each person's actually responsible for and what they really do.
Right.
You know, but the people I talk to seem to know that, say they pick the right guy, and that, you know, and that even though he's younger than Hunter, he's sharp, and he's a good combination of analytics and not analytics and all that kind of stuff, which you want to hear. So
I think that you had two really good candidates, and I think you know, more than likely you're going to see Hunter be a general manager in the NHL within a couple of years. It's just simply a question here of, you know, I think Shanahan picked Dubis 4 years ago, recognized him as an up and coming talent. I mean, there are situations though where a new general manager, agents will try to take advantage of him. Because he's new, his colleagues in the league may not, may try to fleece him in trades. That's why one of the questions that I brought up to Brendan Shanahan was, you know, will you consider, now that you've promoted Dubis and, you know, Lou is in an advisory role right now, whether you'd consider bringing somebody into the organization to be sort of a sounding board or an assistant GM, somebody with experience. And, he didn't really answer the question, but Dubis said, well, once they talk to Hunter and find out what's going on in the organization, that's possible. And names like, you know, Chuck Fletcher and Ron Francis have been circulated. I don't know if that means they're legitimate candidates, but that's a possibility.
Yeah. I think that's very possible. But at the same time, isn't that also what Shanahan kind of is?
Yeah, but I don't think Shanahan wants. I don't think Shanahan wants the day-to-day responsibility of making. I mean, he's going to be in the mix. He's going to be in the, you know, like when big decisions are made, he's going to be there. But I don't think he wants to be like hands-on day-to-day every day. I mean, I just don't think that's the dynamic. So, you know, if Lou is not going to be there, then I think they will bring somebody else in that will be another piece of the puzzle. And like I said, sort of a sounding board. And a guy like Francis, who's a Hall of Fame player and a former general manager and well respected in the league. You know, that might be an option. And Fletcher has experience with Minnesota, so there you go.
Yeah, that makes there's some sense there. I could see, and I think Francis definitely. He's been bought out, as from all I can understand it, and he's free. And although, you know, I hear lots of different things that was really much a mutual decision. So Francis may have wanted out of there as well. We don't know if that has anything to do with Toronto or if that has anything to do with just him wanting out of there. So we really don't know. So let's get on to tonight's game, because I know a lot of people are wondering. I'm about to do my blog when I get home to put my prediction up for Boston and Washington. I'm in Boston. I keep saying Boston, Toronto, and Washington. I really wanted Boston to win that series, man.
Tampa.
I know, Tampa and Washington. Thank you. I really wanted Boston and Toronto to beat Tampa, but here they are. Because I got everything wrong except for Washington in the second round, I might add.
Well, why don't we just say
one thing about last night for a second?
Yeah, just for 1 second, because I know, you know, you're gonna blast me for this, and I
know what you're gonna say.
I talked with Russ this morning, and he agreed, and he'll elaborate on it more on Monday. But I'm sorry, in a Game 7, when you're paying a goaltender nearly $8 million a year, and he's probably going to win the Vezina Trophy, you can't give up 2 goals like Pekka Rinne gave up.
No, you can't. No, especially the first
one. In Game 7, but the fact that he was pulled 3 times at home. I mean, that you can't. And PK
and had 2 shutouts in the series. I mean, when has that ever been possible? When you can ever say a goalie had 2 shutouts and was pulled 3 times in the same series?
Right.
I mean, that's a crazy stat, right? He either was really good or really, really bad. And the first goal, you know, it was really interesting. I heard somebody on XM today who is like a goalie expert who does like the analytics for goalies. And he said something that was shocking, and that Rinne was 31st in the league against shots from bad angles or wraparounds. Like that was there was a book on him, and that they knew what they were doing in this situation. They really did.
Well, I mean,
And
Kyle Connor off the opening faceoff almost scored with a wraparound. He hit the side of the net, and I'm like, oh boy! And like that would have been like think about the most devastating scenario in a
yeah,
game 7
I
would
know.
be scoring on the opening shift and silencing the crowd. But it didn't take much longer until they scored I think it was Myers that scored the goal. I mean, and
Yeah,
then I tip my hat to Peter Laviolette having the guts to put Saros in the in the first period after they were down 2-0. But and I'll convey what Russ said, and I said the goal that Saros allowed, and it was a great play by Wheeler and a one-timer
yeah,
by Scheifele, but that was a small goalie's goal, meaning that if it was a bigger goalie
yeah,
like Rene, he might have been able to get over
yeah.
there. The smaller goalie, there was half the net there, and that's why
It
smaller
was also
goalies.
yeah. No, you're right. You're right about that. I mean, I do agree, and that Saros played pretty well besides that. But it is a small goalie goal. Like there's a lot of goalies like Saros feels like it feels like there's a ton of Saroses out there. Like it feels like like when I
Mm-hmm.
look at it, I see Neuwirth, I see Mrazek, I see Saros, I see goalies that are all in that mold. That really
Yes.
have like that kind of thing. And then you see but Broski who's like that, but better. Like and there's some goalies
Mm-hmm.
who are like that, but have play that style, but are a level ahead of that.
And there are big
Um,
goalies who play like small goalies, but
and there's big goalies who play small goalies, sure, for sure, and
yeah.
that's also an issue, right? So I think that to me, sorry, I just pulled in, so I'll be able to. Sorry.
That was not an accident, folks.
Yes, no, we're fine. We're good. We're good. Everything's good. Everything's good. Here, I'm good. I'm just able to stop for a second now, which is good. All right, so yeah, I mean, to me, Saros really showed what he's about through a lot of the season. I mean, he was really good,
Mm-hmm.
and he is a good goalie, and he's a solid backup.
But
I
but the
don't have any question about that.
but the question is, and like I said, we'll talk
Yeah,
about this more on Monday. Is does Nashville and Russ conveyed to me he thinks
yeah,
they do. Do they have a goaltending problem? Because Rene now is 36 years old and he's got 1 year left in a contract. Saros
yeah,
is a good backup, but I don't think he's a guy who you can rely on for 60 games during a regular season because
yeah,
his
yeah.
I mean his
It's tough. I
the
mean,
size is a
I agree
problem.
with you. The size is an issue, and quickness, and also, especially when you play certain kinds of teams. Certain kinds of
Yeah.
teams are going to be a bigger issue, and I think this is what you saw in this instance.
And
Yeah,
I have to absolutely tip the cap to the Winnipeg Jets. And Peter's back on the show
yeah,
on Monday. I mean, like I said, I thought this was an even series. They were dominating and devastating last night. They didn't, they took the crowd out of the game early with those goals. The Subban goal brought them back into it, but then that third goal
yeah,
was a killer. And then they had they had the killer instinct and poured it on late. So I give them
yeah,
full credit. I've picked I've picked Vegas in 7, but that's just because I think right now Vegas is just like, the team of the gods. It's like everything is going right for them. So I'm going
yeah,
to continue to go with that.
yeah. It's hard not to go there. I don't disagree. As far as this goes, I am not sure. I'm going to put my prediction out for this tomorrow,
Okay.
but I want to put out. I want to put out like obviously. I think if you ask 99.9% of the hockey fans, except those in Winnipeg or maybe even Canada, but even a lot of Canadian fans, I would think Vegas is such an exciting story, and even if Nashville had gotten through, like one of my favorite teams, I would have been fine with them losing to Vegas, because it's such a great story, and that's why part of me wants to. I got to look beyond it, and part of me wants to pick Vegas just because I think you want to pick Vegas. So I've got to look beyond that and see what these teams are really about. I'm going to watch the games these guys played against each other, see if I get any hints. That's usually what I like to do.
Well,
Rewatch the games.
and we're not going to litigate it right now, but the one thing I can say based on last night is, I mean, obviously you saw in Game 7, not only Nashville's defense handle the puck like it was a hand grenade
Yeah,
because it was terrible, but that was a product of maybe bad ice, but also the product of very quick Winnipeg
yeah,
forwards getting on them constantly. And the only team in the West that I think can match the speed of Winnipeg might be Vegas.
yeah.
So
No, I think this
that's
is going to be the fastest series there is. I mean, and I think that the difference between these teams if there's any difference at all, it is going to come down to goaltending. You know, Hallebuck has been good and really good at times. Last night, the saves he made right before the goal that made it 3-1 were the series. You know, that he made a couple really big saves where that series could have been tied at 2, and he came up huge when he had to.
Yeah, one on Fiala that was
phenomenal. Yeah, and then the one where it didn't look like much of a save, but he was up high enough, and this is like a big goalie versus little goalie thing. You know, that hits his shoulder right before the goal. I forget who took it. I think it might have been Ekblad.
It was a defense. It was Ekholm. It was definitely Ekholm.
Ekholm, right? Not Ekblad, of course. Sorry, it's been a day. Ekholm, right. And so Ekholm, you know, and it didn't look like much because he just hits him, right? But the fact that he was up high enough, because that shot was targeted right into the crossbar, and on almost any goalie in the league that goes down soon, that goalie's that he's putting that bar down, right? So he was huge in this game. The interesting thing about this is, again, I like to look at the teams that they played to prepare for this, right? So I look at San Jose and LA have what they have in common is that they score kind of dirty goals, right? They're a team. They both like to crowd the net. They both they're not afraid to score, you know, ugly goals off of someone's backside. They both have skilled players, but they get a lot of, even the skilled players on these teams get a lot out of, you know, actually scoring just the big goals in you know, off of somebody or by crashing the net. The kind of goalie Fleury is, when a goalie's playing that well, you need a skilled team to beat him. You know, you need skill matters when you have a goalie who's playing this well, because Fleury's not is proven like anything dirty like that, he's going to stop everything like that. Like if it's shot from within 3 feet of Fleury, he's stopping it. Like they have to be shots from out further, and they have to be really pinpointed. And this is the first time now that Vegas is going up against a sharp shooting team. Like this is the Jets score pretty goals. You know, they do.
Right. Vegas has had the advantage of being the faster team in both rounds. And in this round, it's going to be, I think, not neutralized, but I think there'll be, you know, Winnipeg is just as fast as they are. Yeah. And granted, to your point, it's like, and you have to factor this in. 2 of Winnipeg's best players, skill-wise, have been, Laine hasn't been nothing, but he's been, you know, he hasn't been up to the standard that we've expected in the regular season. Nikolai Ehlers has no goals.
That's amazing.
I mean, and
he had a glorious chance last night and didn't score. I mean, and that could change too. He's going to get off at some point. I think so too. And I think, and the other thing is that, you know, you don't have the other thing that's going now. Vegas has to score. I mean, they have sharpshooters too. They have some, obviously, but they still score a lot of ugly goals, right? So, you know, Vegas has. Now, when you look at who Winnipeg has played so far, they played Minnesota and Nashville, 2 teams that are. I am so messed up. I am sorry. When you look at who the Jets have played so far, they played. Man, oh man, boy, do I need some sleep. I'm so sorry, guys. When you look at who the Jets have played so far, they have played Minnesota and Nashville. These are 2 teams. Nashville scores some pretty goals, and Nashville can do it all. They can score any way you want. Forsberg, you know, Arvidsson, they scored some really beautiful goals, but they'll also score a crazy goal. The problem with Predators, I think, in this series is they didn't get enough dirty goals. They didn't crash the net enough to really make it happen. That's why I think he put Hartnell in, because he was looking for that. But, you know, Hartnell really, you know, Hartnell still can play. He can still shoot, but you can't blame the guy for not being able to shoot, not being able to skate with players like this. You know, like this is like last night. He just couldn't skate with them. It was obvious. And because Hartnell's up there, you know, I mean, he was an original Predator, like the first time they were in the league, right? So remember that. It's kind of tricky. So I think that now, you know, I think that in a way, Winnipeg has been better prepared by the teams they played than Vegas has going into this series, if you just strike it down like that. So, and I always feel like that does play into it in the first couple games, especially. So, and Winnipeg, you know, I think winning Game 7 there, despite the fact they had the tough Game 6 at home, you know, they're going to having home ice advantage for this series is going to matter a lot to the Jets. I think it really will. I think we're going to see a home ice series, and I don't know how it's going to end in Game 7, but I think it's going 7 games. But it's going to be a home ice series where I think you'll actually see, as opposed to what we just saw, where, you know, teams lost at home. Yep. We're going to see a lot more. But I'll get my prediction in that. So you've got Vegas in 7.
Vegas in 7.
which would be fantastic, and the story would continue, which would just be incredible.
I'm pretty sure Russ picked Vegas in 6.
Okay. I didn't get Kevin. I remember what Kevin said. I think okay. Oh, Kevin. Remember Kevin said Kevin would beat Winnipeg and lose to Nashville.
Right. So he's picking Vegas.
So he's going with Vegas too. Yeah. So I'm not sure yet.
I was gonna say I'm sure that means you're going with Winnipeg.
No, it doesn't. I mean, if I'm going, it doesn't.
Mr. Counterintuitive.
No, I know. I know sometimes, but not always. Not always. I picked a lot of the same things as you guys.
I'm joking.
Usually when I'm counterintuitive, I'm right. So, but I don't know. This one, I really have to tell you right now, I don't know. Like, based on all the arguments I just made, I think people would think that I'm leaning towards Winnipeg. But, this is Vegas. Like, what can you do? Like, how can you do what you like? Angels on the goalpost type thing. How can you get past that? To me,
well, I mean, if this was any other scenario, they wouldn't be here. So the fact that they are here and the fact that they have been doing as well as they have, you have to essentially just throw caution to the wind. I mean, Winnipeg could very easily win this series. I think they're capable. Obviously, they've won 2 rounds, but Vegas is just. I mean, they're just blessed right now. So
they really are. They really are. 1 second.
So what about what?
All right, so tonight's game, tonight's series. Whew, man.
Now I'll give you my read on this because right now the indications are right. Backstrom is not playing at least the first game, maybe the first 2 games. That means Washington is going to have to play that absolute shutdown style that they played the last couple games of the series against Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
that worked against Pittsburgh because I continue to say Pittsburgh was completely beat beyond recognition in terms of just exhaustion.
Yeah, they were beat up.
That's the way they looked. You're talking about a fresh Tampa team that played 5 tough games against Boston, but got some rest. Now they might be a little rusty at the beginning, but I think Tampa will, overcome the Caps because the Caps have Holtby is great. And he's playing great now. Ovechkin seems to have shaken off the playoff schneid, but I think Tampa's too deep, too talented, and unless Vasilevsky doesn't show up, I think they're going to win this series in 6 games. And Russ is picking the Capitals.
Yeah, you're picking.
I'm picking Tampa Bay.
I'm picking the Capitals, right? That's what your prediction is. Your prediction on my prediction is the Capitals.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Caps. I am. And the reason is I just think that they feel like a destiny team to me, more so than Tampa does. Now, and that's not really fair because Tampa hasn't been maybe put up against it because I think Tampa played a Jersey team. And now remember, that Jersey team was really good going into the playoffs, and they handled them very easily. And Boston was really good going into the playoffs and really good against Toronto, and they handled them pretty easily. Yeah, so I mean, Tampa's solid. I just don't think they have played anything like Washington. Like what Washington brings to the table offensively, and also the fact is, I just think Holtby is a better goalie than anybody Tampa's played against yet.
Well, see, that's the thing. I think I put up Boston against Washington in the sense that Boston is similar to Washington in the sense that they're 1-line or 2-line teams. Really, it's like it's all the eggs are in one basket. It's Kuznetsov and Ovechkin on one line, and other than Oshie, I don't fear anybody on the Capitals. Where with the Bruins, it's like you had to beat Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak, and after that, who were you scared of? David Krejci?
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, there are very similarities. Tampa's better. Tampa's better defensively, I think, than Washington is. As far as their just defensemen go, and McDonough is a huge pickup in this series because he knows how to play against Ovechkin.
Right.
And there's definitely that. But I think at the end, I do think that Rask did not. Rask has been okay.
Yeah, Rask was average.
Rask was okay, but Holtby is better. That's what I feel like. I do know Rask isn't playing in the series. I appreciate the. I think Holtby's better, I think is way better than Kincaid was. Kincaid had a tough time in that first round.
Yeah.
Holtby is focused. He's been here before. He knows, and there's just a feeling around that team. And I really trust Barry Trotz, who I've been a fan of and friend of for years since he was in Nashville. He's a huge hockey buzz person too. So I definitely have a soft spot for him.
Mm-hmm.
But Barry Trotz, I definitely, when he said, in that press conference, he just had a sense that he was going to win in Game 7 in the Game 6 Pittsburgh series. That told me a lot about his team, because that Trotz is very tuned into his players, more so than that's what Trotz's strength is. And that's also his weakness at times, but it's his strength is he knows where his players are at, and he knew his players were in the spot that they were going to be able to handle that and do something pretty special against Pittsburgh, and he was right. And they got to a good goalie in Matt Murray, who is and Vasilevsky's good, but I think Matt Murray's better. So they got to a really good goalie in that against Murray. The defense is there. I think this is a 7-game series too, but I'm going with the Caps in this one for sure.
Yeah, I just think there's more support there for Vasilevsky. I mean, defensively and offensively. Boston was not a 4-line team. Tampa Bay is. Tampa Bay can, they'll have Ryan Callahan on the fourth line at times. I mean, that's, having that kind of experience and that kind of,
No, that's true. That's definitely true. And there's huge depth there. But if I would look at it this way, like if I was to take the teams that Washington has played, Columbus against Tampa, if I was to pick that in a series, I would be like, that's pretty much a toss up in my mind, because Columbus was really good at the end of the year and playing out of their mind, and did Bobrovsky. And then I go, if I go to Pittsburgh against Tampa, I probably would have taken Pittsburgh. So I feel like that Washington's played teams that are as good, if not better, than Tampa, and I think that a lot of Tampa's.
See, that's a roundabout way of saying that the Metro is a better division than the Atlantic. And
I'll directly say that the Metro is a better division than the Atlantic.
Right, but the top 3 teams in the Atlantic, I think, are better than, and that's why my pick. Tampa has been my pick to come out of the East all along, and I mean, yes. Divisionally, the Metro is better than the Atlantic. The top 3 in the Atlantic, I think, were better than most of the teams in the Metro. That's
I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't. I don't think. I think that Tampa is as good as anyone in the Metro. But Boston and Toronto, I don't know where they would have finished in the Metro. They would have. I mean, they would have finished. I would say Boston would have finished. They would have finished like 4th and 5th, or 3rd and 4th at the best. Like I do think that Pittsburgh and Washington both would have finished ahead of Boston and Toronto, and I think that beyond that, then the Flyers finished there, but they so yeah, you could say they're going to finish ahead of the Flyers, but I think that in reality is if Columbus should have finished in 3rd, they just gave the last couple of games of the season so they didn't have to play the Penguins.
Well, maybe we'll find out next year when we have the conference playoff format, if the league goes back to it, because then it'll be sort of like that in terms of determining.
Yeah, it would be, but I kind of hope they don't. I kind of like the way we'll talk about that before, but I'm a fan of this format right now, at least for now. I do have issues with it, but I think that I like the idea of it. I would reseat things though eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's about it. I'm glad we did a quick show here, got everything in, and sorry for the delay today, guys. We'll be back on Monday at a relatively normal time, I hope. I don't see why not. And remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you on Monday. Enjoy the weekend.